when you start doing something, it's likely that what you're doing is going to suck. You don't have the skills to execute at a high level. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena, from The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt, simply pointing out the fact that it doesn't matter who the critics are. It doesn't matter who the Monday night quarterbacks are or the people who sit back and try and critique the person who actually does it. It is the doer of the deeds. It is the man in the arena. It is the one who puts himself out in front of all and lays bare his skill and all of his effort in his execution. Every little thing takes the first act. Everything requires a first step. It's so important to remember that perfection is never found in the first draft. The first draft is pretty much always garbage. There's a phenomenal quote, "The first draft of anything is shit," and I reference it regularly, but it's supposed to be. It may be painful to see. What's most important is getting that first draft done. When I was trying out for Team USA, I was working day and night, and I was trying super hard to get this platter to come together. And I was trying to find my way into this perfect platter. I had all these goals and dreams and aspirations and thoughts of how this platter was going to come together and how the whole thing was going to be executed. My goal was to have a gold medal cold food platter, but that was the long distance part. I wanted to put up the absolute best platter, but I kept getting stuck before I ever even started. It wasn't the first time that I'd gotten stuck in this process, but where I was getting stuck was in trying to make the product perfect. I was trying to make the platter perfect on the first go. There's no possible way to make a platter perfect the first time around. There's no way to make food perfect the first time around. In fact, there's no way to get anything perfect the first time. Even with years of experience, there's still drafts that go into things. So as I was fighting and struggling and trying to find this platter, to find my way to getting this thing completed, I noticed, thought about it, and I remembered back to the first hot food competition that I had ever done. My mentor, Ken Arnone, he, at least at the time, it felt like he was picking at me because I was trying to write menus, I was trying to draw pictures, and I was trying to come up with this perfect hot food dish. The competition was, a little more involved than a cold food platter, but it was still a competition, and it was still my first hot food competition ever. But I was so hung up on trying to get the menu just right, on trying to get the food just right, on trying to get the perfect recipes. And all he kept saying was just get the first one done. Get the first one done. That's all you need to do. You need to get the first version up, and then you have a baseline of a place where you can start so that you can move your way forward. Just get the first one done. And that's all I started to hear in my head as I was trying to pull together and get my cold food platter for tryouts ready, was just get it done. Get the first one done. It doesn't have to be perfect. Perfection can't be found in the first draft. I didn't find that quote until I was, 36? God, I wish I'd found it 10 years earlier. Would have made a complete difference in my life with all of the work that I was doing, with all the work that I had done, with the courses that I had done, with everything. Just realizing and recognizing that perfection was never going to come in the first draft would have made an absolute world of difference. It would have made so much of a difference that I probably would have gotten a lot more done. I would have tried more. I would have been more willing to contribute and more willing to fail, quite honestly, because it's really what ends up happening is that the first version isn't really going to get you where you need to go. I look back and I think through my high school years and how I really tried to skip over the first draft. And I never wanted to turn in a first draft because I never saw the point of it. And then as I started getting older, I started to see the relevance more and more. And I realized where all of my troubles came in. Just having too high of an expectation too early in the process. The first draft is the most powerful step down the path of execution. The first draft is the most necessary step in taking steps down the path towards mastery. Everything has to start somewhere, all in what you do with it. It's all in how you look back. It's all in how you reflect. There's several different steps that I feel that are critical to execution. They all start with having a first draft. Then we need to iterate. Once that iteration is done, once that first draft is complete, then you can take and you can get feedback. With critical and constructive feedback, you can apply the wisdom of people who've been there before, of the chefs who've done it before, of people who've done the work before. And you can get that feedback, you can get that information, and you can leverage those resources. Earlier, I said there is a limited amount of time in which we can be creative and in which we can produce. So one of the quickest ways to kind of overcome that massive hurdle is to get feedback from people who are going to give us good quality feedback and get us where we need to go. After you take feedback, then we need to create a form of personal filter for everything. I talk about this in my programs. I talk about it in my challenges. I talk about creating a filter for your life with everybody that I interact with. Anybody who works with me as a client or as a student or as a mentee, I try and start with a filter. Everybody knows what a chinois is. Everybody knows what a strainer is or what a sieve is, right? It catches the big chunks and it only lets through the finer material. Your life should have a filter involved to filter in anything that comes into your world, right? I have a rule. I won't take advice from somebody who I won't switch places with. If I don't want to be where they're at, then I'm not going to switch places with them. I'm not going to take advice from them because there's no point in asking a single friend who's terrible in relationships marital advice. Not if you want your marriage to last. If you want your marriage to end, it might be a good way to go about it. Don't ask a broke friend or somebody who has not been successful advice in an area where you want success. If you're thinking of opening a restaurant, don't ask people who've never opened a restaurant before. There's a lot to learn from people who failed at opening restaurants. There's a lot to learn from people who've been successful. Asking somebody who's never tried, they're really only going to give you an opinion. They're not going to give you facts. They're not going to give you useful information. And if you don't filter that out, it's going to get in the way of your decision making, and it's going to get in the way of your reiteration, your evolution, and whatever version comes next. You can take all the feedback in the world, you can filter it as much as you want, but you need to create the next thing. You need to implement those changes. You need to push your comfort zone. You need to push beyond it, and you need to implement those changes in order to see that progress, in order to execute at a higher level, in order to execute at any level, really. I mean, we all have great ideas. We've all heard great ideas. We've had mentors pour wonderful things into us. But if they're not being applied, then you're certainly not going to use them. And then the only thing that you have is knowledge. And knowledge that isn't applied is essentially pretty useless. The most significant step, most every chef that I've ever interacted with that skips, is the reflection step. Looking back on what worked, what didn't, how's it going to go forward? What are you going to stop doing? What are you going to keep doing? If you're not reflecting on the work that you're doing, then you're probably not going to make the progress that you can as quickly as you can. We may not necessarily know what questions to ask or what answers we may be looking for. Early on in your career, we should have mentors who are going to give us the feedback to continue down the path to succeed at a higher level. Now, again, you want to make sure that your mentors have been where you're trying to get to, are where you're trying to go, and there's somebody that you respect with a beneficial opinion on the subject. There's a lot of people who tout expertise without any wisdom or experience. So be conscious of who you're taking advice from. Now you can start your second draft. Now you can reiterate and create your third draft. Key is to start. The key is to come up with your draft, put in the work, do the steps necessary for that thing to evolve. Perfection is the enemy of execution. I think I hear it from Tony Robbins the most. Perfection is the enemy of execution. If you're waiting for perfection, it's going to stop you from executing. It's going to stop you from acting. It's really easy to get hung up on waiting for perfection, on trying to get something perfect in strategy before you ever try, before you ever take something to market, before you try and push a product or before you put a dish in front of somebody. People are scared of the initial feedback. Here's the truth. When you start doing something, it's likely that what you're doing is going to suck. You don't have the skills to execute at a high level. That comes with practice. Get it out of the way. Accept that the first draft is going to be rubbish and get those poor executions out of the way so that you can move on, you can move forward, and you can take the steps to get to higher level execution. It's really rough and bumpy in the beginning. It's okay. It's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be easy. This is a craft. Main point I'm making here is that perfection comes after years of iterations and learning. The more iterations you go through, the more you learn. This is why I'm such a big fan of competition. Competition creates this environment where you produce something and then you run through this loop time and time again, very much in a way that you never run through iterations, very much so in a way where you don't necessarily focus on the progress, the feedback, and the implementation. So often, when I was a young line cook, I remember having a product on my line, understanding how to cook it and just cooking it. I don't remember reflecting or revising or doing anything really significant with it. There was no evolution. When I started putting up competition dishes, that changed, right? That the whole process changed because now I was putting up a project. I was putting up a plate that had a purpose. The purpose was to take to a competition and to be successful. Success was aiming for a gold medal. That might be a little unrealistic for the first time. The success with going for certification is going to be passing certification. It may not happen on the first try. If you've never competed or you've never been certified before, you've never been through the process, or if you haven't practiced, you're learning all of the steps that you could have learned in one feedback session. The more feedback sessions you get when you're trying to go for something that's higher level, the more likely you are to be successful. I think that success comes with 6 to 10 practices. Anything. If it's a pastry competition, a cold food competition, a hot food competition, the Olympics, we had 24 practices. Those were monthly practices. And that doesn't even include the work that was done in between. But each one of those sessions was designed to give us the most critical, advanced, deep feedback that we could possibly get, to iterate and get through this loop as quickly as humanly possible so that we could evolve the food. In competition, you're forced to evolve the food. You're constantly putting something up and you're having critical feedback. When you have good mentors or you have a chef that has a great palate, you're going to get the characteristics from that chef and that great palate that they have. You're going to understand things on a deeper level because they have a deeper level understanding of that thing. It's really interesting when you go to the CMC exam and you see all the CMCs in the kitchen evaluating. Not all of them are focused on the same thing. Some are focused on sanitation, hyper-focused. Some are super focused on the butchery of the raw products. Some are focused on the classical cooking techniques. Some are even focused on, the handling of produce, the way that things are put away in the refrigerator. There are some things that absolutely every single one of us looks at together, but everybody kind of has their particular thing that they're focused on. So the people that are giving you feedback are going to help bring you to the next level. Seek the highest level feedback you can possibly get. This is why I'm so in favor of pursuing the path of culinary mastery. I'm not saying passing the Master Chef exam. I'm talking about mastering the craft, understanding all product and cooking on a much deeper level. I think in some ways we're in an apprenticeship for our entire lives. We have this long period of time where we go through some pretty interesting and fantastic steps. And I'm going to take the 8 steps that Robert Greene talks about in the book Mastery, and I want to elaborate on those a little bit because I think his 8 steps are really key to helping kind of pull apart this idea of a successful apprenticeship. There are keys in completing a successful apprenticeship. And if you can look back and you can identify those moments in your career. And if you're looking forward and you're looking to understand a clear path down the road towards mastering the craft or becoming an expert in the field, becoming a true professional in the business, there's going to be some things that you need to do. And the first one is learning to value the education over money. And if you look at this, kind of pick it apart a little bit, probably everybody knows the chef who maybe at a young age had a ton of talent, was offered an executive chef job early, and then they peaked early is usually how I've heard it said, at a young age, to value the experience so you can have the greater pay later on in your career. If you're aiming for money, if you're working towards money in the beginning, there's just a lot of things that you're simply not going to have. You should be able to make a good amount of money later on, especially as a master of the craft. As a true professional in the field, you're going to stand out just by nature because people don't often pursue that path. If you have and you've been successful, then you have something to offer. You have a value in the marketplace that is rare. Being one of 73 certified master chefs in the country makes me a rare commodity. There should be more master chefs. I think people don't try. People don't take the path, but it's possible. It's possible for anybody with the skill to pass the exam if you're trying to learn and if you're going the path of mastery. Now, the second, keeps expanding your horizons. I couldn't find a better way to explain it, and that's why I used his words. You need to live under pressure. Progress does equal happiness. We all go through phases where we have massive spurts of growth and then we try and take it easy for a little while, or we get really comfortable and we try and get cozy and then we try and settle down for a minute. But then all of a sudden, I think every chef I know gets that little itch, that tingle that they're not pushing. They're no longer at their edge. They're not fully engaged. Their level of interest has waned off a little bit. If you're not continually expanding your horizons, then you're not going to continue to find progress and therefore be able to continue working your way forward and, enjoying the expansion of your horizons. Number 3, revert to a feeling of inferiority. Now, I know this doesn't really sound very appealing to anybody, but think about having a beginner's mindset. Think about curiosity, innocence. Think about when you had nothing to lose. That's what he's talking about here. Reverting to a feeling of inferiority is going back to the beginning and not being worried about falling short, about not hitting your mark, about not looking good, or about trying and failing. None of that. If you're able to go back to that state where you're okay with looking foolish in order to come out with a win on the other side, there's going to be strong progress. Number 4, trust the process. Everything has a process. There's a process in all things. It's important that the mentors that are around you are helping you down your path. The people that you're learning from, the people in your circle. There is a process to life. There is a process to mastery, and there is a process of learning and growing. And there will be times in life, and I'm sure you recognize them, that there have been those moments when you may have slipped off of your path, that the universe kind of finds a way to nudge you back on. Don't worry about falling off your course. The world will reveal the path to you if you're looking for it. So maintain looking for it and trust in the process with your end goal in mind. The more you understand how things interact. And so if you're trusting in the process, you're going to accumulate more of that universal understanding and be better equipped with taking better steps forward. Number 5, move toward resistance and pain. So many people back away, but I believe that high performance chefs are able to embrace their discomfort. For me, whenever I feel the tinge of discomfort, or when I feel like I kind of want to quit, or I feel like I kind of want to take it easy, or wow, this is really new to me, that's when I know I'm on the right path. So I need to dig in a little bit deeper. I need to embrace the situation that I'm in, and I need to take steps forward. So Move toward the resistance and pain. Use that as a metric for growth and for expansion. And eventually you do become numb to it. I see so many competitors and I see so many chefs in certification that haven't cooked in front of chefs before. And it's unfortunate because there's a stress that comes about that you may have never realized. When you cook in front of chefs, when you cook in front of your peers, when you get that feedback, you eventually do become numb to it. It becomes kind of insignificant. You get used to it. Stress comes from the unknown. It comes from not knowing the feeling, not being familiar, not knowing how things are going to work out. And when you don't know how things are going to work out and you don't know what that feeling is, you're going to struggle. There's going to be more pain there. So move in the direction of pain and resistance. And in the end, you're going to have a lot more joy and have a much more smooth experience as you continue down your path. Make sure to apprentice yourself in failure. This is number 6. Apprentice yourself in failure. My wife always laughs at me whenever I start a new project because she always tells me that I bite off more than I can chew. No matter what, when you're doing something for the first time, you're always biting off more than you can chew. Sometimes it's going to work out. Sometimes it's not. If it's not going to work out, figure out a way to make it work out, or start over, or modify, or change your plan, or head down a different path, take a different course of action, whatever it is. Just know that you're going to fail when you do things. Don't be afraid of failing. Number 7, combine the how and the what. So before you can change the world of food, before you can change your world, before you can change your status and your value in the market, you have to understand the rules that the culinary world lives by and the laws that rule the outcomes of the processes. There are certain steps that need to happen to food in order for it to come out delicious. There's certain ways to develop flavor. I'm not saying that all have been discovered. Before looking for new methods, learn the old ones. Before pulling out new names and trying to call something inappropriately, understand what the name means. Understand the past before moving forward. The what needs to be ingrained in the how. If those two are not connected, then there's always going to be a disassociation. As a younger cook, it's really easy to see. You don't really understand all the things that go into the chef's job. I know I never did. I never understood what a sous chef did until I became one. I never understood what a chef did until I became one. There's a lot of people who don't even strive to become sous chefs, but you can't make that leap until you combine the how and the what. Number 8, the last one from Robert Greene, is advance through trial and error. Just try it. If you don't try it, it's absolutely never going to work. If you don't take the shot, you're not going to have it. Wayne Gretzky, one of my favorite hockey players of all time. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If you want to have some success, if you want to grow faster than anything else, you have to try things, you have to fail at things, and then you need to be able to get the feedback, filter it, reiterate, reflect, revise, and find your way to the other side. No matter what, if you don't try it, things are not going to work. Committing to the first draft is the key to get all of these steps as we apprentice our way through life. To the end result, we need to find balance between being a beginner and having a mindset of mastery. Now, I mentioned the mindset of mastery a little bit, and I talked about the path to the mindset of mastery. In the grand scheme of things, having a mindset of mastery is merely focusing on the goal of mastering of your own faculties and of your own world. The more you understand, the more you grow. The more you focus on growth, the more you're capable of growing. They're intrinsically related. And if you have a mindset that's continually pushing you towards a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of approach, a more refined approach, then everything in your life is going to benefit from it. Remember when I was preparing for the CMC exam, I had a very different outlook than I had ever had throughout my life. I had mentors who tried to teach me this, but I don't think it ever really occurred to me the metric that I was trying to understand. As I was getting ready for the CMC exam, every dish that I was preparing, I tried to have that perspective. Would this dish pass a day at the test? That was what I need. Those words are what I needed to push my food, to push my development to push harder to get to that level of mastery. I couldn't get there without those words. I wish I'd heard those words earlier. So that's why I want to introduce the idea of the mindset of mastery to anybody who's never heard it before. It's not mine. I don't know exactly whose it could be, but I know that it is relevant and it is necessary if you want to be truly great and stand out in our craft. If you're looking for a way to have stability, to take care of yourself, to take care of your family, if you're looking for a way to know and be proud and have purpose, then the mastery of the craft is going to be the key that's going to do that. Any craft, whatever craft it is that you're investing yourself into. Since we're talking to chefs, I think it's really relevant to talk about mastering the craft of cooking, mastering the fundamentals and the foundations, because the more you understand things, the deeper you understand things, the more that applies to every other aspect of your life, and the more it leads to a much greater experience in life. Working towards mastering the craft and mastering the products in my world has allowed me to focus my effort up front, because I never really wanted to experience some of the pains that I held from some of my failed competitions earlier on. When I was going to the test, I remember Ken Arnone's words so clearly: you don't want to fail the test. Do everything you can to not fail the test. And so I immediately applied that into discipline, because I remembered trying out for the Bocuse d'Or Team USA. I remember one of my earlier hot food competitions where I fell on my face because I didn't practice enough, because I didn't spend enough time, because I didn't have the discipline in doing all of the little components, all of the little things the right way to stand up, to show up, and then to execute at the level that I needed to. So then I had to deal with the pain of regret. I feel like we all need those little events in our lives to help show us the reality of how much it sucks to regret not putting in the work when we have the chance. The time to put in the work is up front. The time to put in the work is with the discipline. It's not sexy, it's not pretty, and a lot of people don't really like the idea. But if you're not committing to putting in the work, then you're going to have to deal with the regret of not putting in the work. It's not pretty, but it's the little disciplines done daily that yield the most significant results over any period of time. It's insignificant at first, but continual action eventually yields significant results. Think of compounding interest, or think of it in terms of a piece of paper stacking up on the desktop. If you stack a single sheet every day on the desktop, it's not going to look like much after 30 or 40 days. Maybe after 60 or 90, you'll start to see a stack. After a year, you'll start to see an actual stack of paper. And then anything beyond that, you really start to see the difference. You start to see little jumps. It's that discipline in the mundane. It's the discipline through the boredom that's really going to carry the way through the apprenticeship and into that level of mastery. But it all starts with the first draft. It all starts with taking action, committing to significant action, failing or succeeding, reflecting, and then doing it again. That is life. Trying to do something you've never done, maybe being good at it, maybe not. Trying again. Anything that you're truly invested in mastering is going to require that effort, is going to require that commitment and that discipline.